Thank you for joining the Symphony Learning Series, Session 5, Menu Item Maintenance, Part 3, the Advanced course. Today we're going to be focusing namely on forced modifiers. So we'll go through condiment groups, which we touched on briefly in the last session. Menu item classes, where we'll spend most of our time, both looking at the required condiment group menu item class, as well as the member condiment group menu item class. And then we'll actually do an example of adding a new forced modifier by first defining a condiment group, then adding the required condiment group menu item class, then adding the member condiment group menu item class, and then finally adding or assigning definitions with those new menu item classes. So to get started, we're going to take a look first in the menu item classes module. So most properties now by standard are using the property level configuration of all menu item classes, but keep in mind, just as we covered in session 1 hierarchy, the level at which the menu item classes or any of the other things we touch on today could be at the revenue center level as well. So you always want to double check at the revenue center level first that you don't have any overrides on the menu item classes that you're looking at. So first you launch the menu item classes module, here in this case at the property level. I'm going to look at double clicking or using the toggle table form view icon up in the bar in order to switch views from the default over to the tabbed view where you can go to the condiment groups tab. This is where we'll be looking at the 3 different columns below: required condiment groups, allowed condiment groups, and member condiment groups. We won't really be touching on the allowed because that really just means which condiment groups below that are checked are actually allowed to be applied to any of the items that are in this class. Today we'll be focusing namely on the required and the member. You may be wondering where these condiment group names come from. So I went ahead and showed the module here. If you go to the property level, of course it could be the revenue center if there's overrides, but 9 times out of 10 it's all at the property level. On the descriptors tab, you'll see the condiment group names module in the bottom left there in the group section. And that's where you can actually define all of these condiment group names that show up in these 3 sections. This is really just a label internally within EMC to help keep things organized and keep it straight for yourself when you're organizing these menu items. Although the name will show up in the title bar of the pop-up if you're using pop-ups for the force modifiers on the workstation. Also important to note, the order in which these are listed will be the order that they're prompted if you have multiple forced prompts. So for example, if you're asking both the egg prep and the breakfast sides options, they will go in that order because egg prep is number 2 and breakfast sides is number 4 in the list. So they are sequential. So first I'd like to look through the menu item classes and compare the required versus the member. When you're looking in your list of menu item classes, you'll see that many of the initial records start with R or R dash, and that's for required. So if you look at 107 here, that's require meat temp. That means that any of the menu items that are within this menu item class require the meat temperature pop-up. If you look at the 3000 series at the bottom of your list of menu item classes, these are the correlated food condiment sections with the condiments that are tied in. So if you look at 3002, those are the members of meat temp. So if you look at the references tab within these 2 options, this will help to explain it and create the visual representation of which actual items are here. So if you look at that 107 require meat temp and you click the find references on the references tab, you'll see that these, the steak salad, burger, New York strip, ahi, surf and turf, tenderloin rack, lamb rack, dinner special, kids fillet, and kids steak, are all the menu items that are assigned to the require meat temperature because those menu items require a meat temperature. If you look at the references to the members of meat temp, that's the actual prompts that you'll get. Those are the meat temperatures themselves, from rare all the way through well done. So if you think of those 2 as kind of partners here, the required is paired with the member. All the items that require the meat temperature are there on the R-M temp menu item class, and the members themselves of those meat temperature condiment group are blue rare all the way through seared rare. So let's dig in a little bit further and look at the details of the condiment groups tab of this required meat temp menu item class 107. If you look on the condiment group tab in the required condiment group section, that column below that I've highlighted, the meat temp checkbox is checked for required condiment groups. That means, and just as a reminder, I posted over on the far right there, the items that are in this menu item class. All those items that are assigned to this require meat temp menu item class are simply that. The burger requires a meat temp, so the burger is in the require meat temp menu item class. The menu item class itself is configured with the checkbox in the require condiment group section. Conversely, if we're looking at the member condiment groups down in the 3000 section, the members of meat temp, you'll see the examples on the right once again, blue rare through seared rare. And the member condiment groups section on the condiment groups tab of the members of meat temp menu item class, the members condiment group section, meat temp is checked. And that's how the system differentiates between whether this is an item that requires the meat temperature or these are the actual meat temperature members. Just a quick reminder, we did look at this in the last session, but if you have more than one, a minimum, a maximum can be set on the next tab over after condiment groups on the forced condiment section once you've configured those checkboxes. So in this example, I have the required build your own omelet choice menu item class. And you'll see that in that case, there's two that are required, both the omelet toppings and the toast choice. And in this case, the toast choice only has a minimum 1 and maximum 1, but the omelet toppings have a minimum of 0 all the way up through a maximum of 14 toppings. So you're allowed to add as many as 0 or as many as 14. As few as 0, as many as 14 toppings to your omelet. So now I'd like to go through a quick example of adding a brand new force modifier from scratch and then applying it to existing menu items and members that I've created for the sake of time. So we'll go through defining the condiment group first. Then we'll look at adding both the required condiment group menu item class as well as the member condiment group class. And then lastly, assigning those new menu item classes to the definitions. So first, in defining the condiment group, it's that same module I indicated earlier. Typically at the property level, we go to the condiment group names module on the descriptors tab. You're going to want to find a blank line here. And this is also important to double check that you don't have any overrides in your revenue centers because sometimes the revenue center may have different condiment group names than the property level. But if you have a blank record, in this case, I highlighted record 12, it's not used. So we can go ahead and type in the one we want to add. So for today's example, I'm going to use lunch sides. I'm going to create a brand new condiment group name called lunch sides here on line 12. Once I've saved that, when I launch the menu item class module or refresh it, if I already have it open, I'm going to first select a record that I want to use as a template in order to add a new menu item class for the required condiment group for lunch sides. In this case, I want it to be fully taxed and not prompt for a seat. So I'm going to pick that food full tax no seat as my template record. One click, then click up on the top in the insert record green plus icon or the insert button on your keyboard. Then the pop-up insert record will come up. I want to select after currently selected entry, so it'll find the next available record after that food full tax no seat. Check the box to use a template because I'm going to use that template record, food full tax no seat, and then enter the record name. In this case, the R- for require lunch sides. Click OK, you'll get your new required lunch sides menu item class down there. In this case, record 118 was the next available. I'm going to either double click to switch views or again, click that toggle table form view icon up on the taskbar and go over to the condiment groups tab. Once I'm here, I want to make sure the required condiment groups option is checked for line 12, lunch sides, the condiment group name that I just added. Just to reiterate, if you don't see the name there and you've added it, make sure you click refresh if you already had the menu item class module open. Otherwise, if you open it from scratch, you'll see the new item added there. But you can see in all three columns, we've got that lunch sides line 12 added there. Just want to check the box for required. Then next, we're going to go over and create the member condiment group menu item class. And these will be the actual items that are the lunch sides themselves. So once again, I want to select a template record. In this case, I'm just going to pick the very first member group, record 3001, and then switch it from the members of meat temp to members of lunch sides. So one click to select it. Click up on the green plus to insert the record. Once again, same options, after currently selected entry, using a template, and adding the name, members of lunch sites. Double click on it or click on the toggle table form view in order to switch over to the tab view. Go to your condiment groups tab, and in this case, the member condiment groups column, you want to check the box for 12 lunch sides and uncheck 1 for meat temp, because remember, this was the template from members of meat temp, so that was checked when I first came in here. Uncheck that, check 12 instead, and save it. And now we've created both the required condiment group menu item class and the member condiment group menu item class. Now we need to actually assign some definitions to these classes. You can add new definitions in your database, just like any other menu item. Or in this case, I'm just going to assign the menu item class to some existing definitions I already added for the sake of time, since we covered that in both the beginning and intermediate sessions of menu item maintenance in the Symphony Learning Series. So I'm going to launch the menu item maintenance module. Once again, in my example, I'm using the property level, as in most cases. However, you may need to do this at the revenue center levels if you have overrides. Click the search button and pull up my menu items on the definition records tab. I'm looking now way down at the bottom. I'm going to start with the members. Looking down in the 900 or 90 million range, which is where our condiment groups are. So in this case, I found the header for members of condiment group 12. You could change that name and type that in as lunch sides if you like in the header row there. In this case, I've just added 3 records: French fries, fruit, and side salad. Simple example of some lunch sides. I'm in the menu item class column, and I'm going to assign the menu item class members of lunch sides to these 3 menu items that I've created. So once I change that to the new record I created, menu item class 3015 for members of lunch sides, and hit save, those are now associated to be the members of lunch sides. So now I'm going to go up to the required section in my sandwiches and assign these require lunch side menu item classes to all of the different sandwich options that require lunch sides to prompt. However, when I'm looking through the list, there's also some things in this that need to have more than just a lunch side prompted. So I am actually going to highlight those for you. Looking at burgers, steak sandwiches, these are things that I'm actually going to require 2 things. I'm going to need the meat temperature as well as the lunch side. So rather than go through the entire steps all over again, all I have to do now is create a new menu item class that requires both the meat temperature and the lunch side options. So I went ahead and added required meat temp / lunch sides as a new menu item class. And on the condiment groups tab in the required condiment groups section, I checked both boxes, meat temp and lunch sides. Remember, if you do this while you already have the menu item maintenance module open, you need to click refresh, which is in the top left corner, the 2 circles circling each other on the menu item maintenance window. When you refresh, then you'll have that new option showing up in your menu item class list, which I've added as 119, require both meat temp and lunch sides. And then I set those on the pub burger, the Churrasco steak sandwich, Cali burger, South burger, steak sandwich, and the Cali burger and Italian burgers. So now they'll prompt the users for both the meat temp and the lunch side. Lastly, I just want to do a quick double check. So I'm going to go through the 3 menu item classes that we created and just make sure that the references tab show all the items we wanted to link. So first, here's our members of lunch sides. And I went to the references tab on the far right and clicked find references, and there they are: French fries, fruit, and side salad. If I check the required lunch sides, there's all the options that we had that don't need a meat temperature. And then lastly, the require meat temp and lunch sides. There's the burgers and steak sandwiches that require both. So just to recap what we covered today: condiment groups as a way of labeling within the system the descriptors, menu item classes, both the required condiment groups and the member condiment groups. And then we covered an example of adding a new forced modifier by defining the condiment group, adding the required condiment group menu item class, adding the member condiment group menu item class, and then assigning or adding those definitions to those new menu item classes that we created.